the unit price method is not feasible, doesn't work in this case. The time and materials where the contractor just gets we pay exactly what their time and materials are plus say 15% markup. That's a really difficult one to do in this case with the structure of the pipelines, that we aren't really adding pipeline to this. We're really kind of changing his work method. And so it's kind of difficult to separate the time he would have been spending with the time he is spending. And so the option that we're proposing here is the negotiated option. But the pros of just going ahead with this change order are we could build this summer. And actually, I think the contractor has indicated he could get started as early as this week. He has already had this programmed in. There's a fairly high degree of cost certainty on this. It's good to know what our future obligations are going to be. It would allow us to decommission the Scenic View water treatment plant. I think, like Don said, it's not going to fall down right now, but we'd like to get rid of it sometime in the very near future. There's better water quality for Scenic View and Phoenix Lake Park if they were served off of the new pipeline and through Upper Basin. Not to say we don't meet all the MCLs and all the health requirements. It's legally safe water. It's just to be a better water quality, especially because we know what Phoenix Lake can be like in the late summer. We have a very capable contractor. The district has a good relationship with Moyle. They've been fair and competent and done good work for the district before. The pipe's already been purchased, so it's listed as a pro that we would just go ahead and move forward with the investment we've already made. The cons, obviously the increase in cost. Our next year CIP budget is pretty limited. Just meaning that if this gets deferred or pushed too far, it means we'll have to make some tough decisions on what we do with the limited funds for next year on projects. We may have to forego other projects next year. And then I'll be honest with you, it's unknowable how fair this price increase is. I think it's fair, but I mean, I can't give you any data to convince you one way or the other. Like I said, Josh Moyle's here. He could speak to that a little bit more, but it seems in line with the other bids we received. Option 2, cancel the contract. So the 2 bookends here. The pros associated with that is, we're going through a potential rate increase at the time. Inflation is, very high, and there's some uncertainty there about what our budget will look like in the future. This would allow us to drop back and reevaluate at some undetermined future time. It would preserve the flexibility to rebid this. I will say, I think if we rebid it, it's going to be higher, or to have TUD crews do the construction. In the past, we couldn't have really dedicated TUD crew to doing work in the public right of way, because if a water main broke in downtown Sonora, they can't just leave an open trench in the middle of the road. But we've reorganized so that we have multiple construction crews now, and they already did the first phase of Phoenix Lake Road. So it seems like it's possible. There's a grant funding that's been promised. I shouldn't say promised, has been said that this project is eligible. We have a funding application and indications from the state that it would be funded at some point. Again, till we have that money, I don't know. And then another option is to just break this into smaller phases. There's one logical phase that it could be broken into, and that is Phoenix Lake Road, do that portion, and then do the Ridgewood portion at another time. See here, cons. Well, I mean, if we terminate the contract, there's going to be some cost, I think, reasonably due to the contractor. They have spent a fair amount of time up to this point preparing submittals and arranging for, basically handling all of the procurement, the materials. There's been a lot of work. So I think that there would be some cost associated with terminating the contract, yet I don't know what it is. We'd have to continue operating Scenic View water treatment plant and the Summit pump station. We cannot replace the Summit tank. It isn't the worst tank we have, but we need to have this pipeline in service so we can bypass that tank and take it down and do reconstruct a new tank there at some point. Our crews are fully utilized right now. You know, it might be difficult to find time for them to jump on this. And until this is done, the work that they've just completed or are completing in Upper Ridgewood would really have no utility. And we'd have the pipeline to nowhere until we can connect the two legs here. I already said the new bid could be more. And then we also can't abandon the Scenic View clear well, which we would like to do. So those are the two bookends. I don't know if there's any questions. Director Balin?
So just to clear this up about the pipe, right? On this slide, we've already purchased the pipe, so we own the pipe.
Correct.
Okay, then in a previous slide, it talks about buying the pipe at now this new price, what was it, 100? We're from 100. So could you go back to that other slide, please? Yep. Where it said, yeah, there we go. Yeah, 103 to 160. So if we've already bought the pipe, what's this about? Excuse me.
That's a great question. I'm sorry. This is why we ask these questions. The price that you're seeing quoted there, the $130 a lineal foot, is out the door pricing, including all the material, labor, and equipment used to install. Yeah, it's the installed price. Yeah. The actual pipeline itself price is, you know, I don't recall what 8-inch C900 is running right now, but it's, you know, a lot less. Sure.
Thanks. So competitors are looking at this, I'm sure. What the board decides. So we have had protests filed, I think, by various contractor associations. And I'm concerned about that for this. This is a substantial change order. And could you give me an idea of what would be the percentage of one of the bidders deciding to say, well, wait a minute, you know, and contact their union or their contract association to protest?
Well, Jesse's on, so this is good. But usually we see bid protests occurring shortly after bid opening, and there we have a prescribed time limit for contractors to submit a protest, and often it's based on some irregularity, non-responsiveness with their bid. Like, so there's some maybe a material problem with their bid. Like they didn't fill something out correctly, or their math didn't add up right, or they didn't acknowledge an addenda, or, you know, whatever it is. And in this case, we went through that bid protest period. There were no protests. So this was a clean bid, and we awarded. There's been no conflict whatsoever. For this change order, this change order would be the subject of any bidder. If we were going with a different one, they'd also be seeking a change order because we've changed the scope of the work, and that was not known at the time of the bid. So it wasn't like we concealed information, you know, and then after we awarded it, we daylighted this information. There are some times when like a unit price or a quantity changes in a bid substantially, and then like changes by say 25% or more, then the contractor can renegotiate the entire unit cost. That's again not happening here. What we're really requesting is not a change of scope at all, in the sense that we're doing the same amount of footage of pipe. It's just we're flipping it to the other side of the road. So I don't see a great exposure or risk to the district with this. Other people coming out to protest. I will say, having TUD crews do this, that is more where I think contractors could be more likely to ask questions. But Jesse has addressed these time and time again. Contractors have asked, how can you have TUD crews do this work? And he's on so he can address that.
Sure. Thank you. So we're paying for the USA service?
Correct.
Paying for that. Okay, but my question is, do they have a database we can just check on things like this? I mean, this is an 11th hour discovery, in my opinion. And the ratepayers having to pay for this 11th hour discovery. So we're paying for a service that will not come in at the very beginning. And why is that?
USA rules. USA can't be used to actually design a project. So you can't say, well, I presume I want to do pipeline in this segment of roadway and call in a USA and have all of the other utilities come out and mark their service and then go through and do your design. So USA actually has their own rules about being used to, pre-USA project. USA is just for the contractors to go, there's utilities here that you have to be aware of. But, if that helps.
So I'll just follow up, bear with me. So let's say we don't know they're there. And we dig and we discover them. Then we would be having to pay for a disruption.
Well, yeah, if we do not call in a USA and we start construction in an area and we dig up a gas line, a power line or other utility services, the contractor or utility is responsible for all the repair, disruption, and the cost to the other utility for lost services.
Okay, so thank you very much. That clarifies it. That saves on that end, but it doesn't save on our design end. Thank you.
Director Bailing, could I just really quick add, I think you hit the core issue. I mean, what we're talking about here is one project, but what you're referring to is something that could happen in any number of projects. And the USA, our understanding is the USA is considering changing their policies to allow for locating for design purposes. But internally here, how can we avoid this in the future? One of the things we've talked about is doing a couple things. One, for projects where we really think there's a potential to have a utility conflict, we don't wait for USA. We sometimes do kind of USA for design. We're not supposed to, but we would send out a utility verification letter. And so TUD would send out on TUD letterhead, say, we're planning on doing this project. Here's a basic map of the pipeline alignment, and you have a month AT&T to respond with any information you can at all to inform our design so that we avoid this in the future. The other route we can go is the district could hire a third-party locator at cost to go out and locate AT&T's facilities. We just have never done that to my knowledge. But that would have been great in this case, because then we could have bid the project in the right side of the road, the northbound lane side of the road. So I think you're touching on something that's really important, and we're going to have to change our procedures going forward.
Director Rainey.
So, Eric, what makes the AT&T conduit lines, whatever? Why can't we work with it?
Probably the best way to. I'm going to show you a picture here. This is one location, right, along 7,000 feet of pipeline. So, but I picked this location because it illustrates the issues with moving the pipeline alignment. So I can't tell, I actually don't think you can see my cursor. Can you see my, okay. All right. So if we were over here, on the side of the road. Moyle could be digging here and loading a dump truck that's occupying this lane. This lane is now open continuously for one-way traffic. There may be a pilot car if it was really long distance, there may not, may just be flaggers, but it means he can continuously dig. By moving that pipeline over here, we would have loved to put it off the road, but as you can see, there isn't enough room. He needs some space because he doesn't dig right on the side. He's, you know, his excavator tracks have some room that they need. Plus, you've got drainage in here, which we don't want to be under. And so what we ended up with was a pipeline alignment, and ideally you put the pipeline in between the wheel tracks so that people aren't going over every valve lid. Pretty annoying. So by the time you're over here, and where do you put your dump truck? Well, your dump truck's sitting, occupying part of this lane, or it's behind you and he has to swing around, which thanks to Elizabeth, she created these exhibit maps to try to illustrate this point to you. And I don't want to get too detailed, but I also want to answer your question. So here's this situation where you could still maintain one single lane open to traffic, but the excavator can't swing this way because he's swinging out into lane of traffic. So he has to swing this way. If you can see that, well, you can't do that in this case because there's a cut bank right there. So that's the kind of sort of obstacles we're dealing with up and down the road.
Next to AT&T.
Oh, I'm sorry. I went on
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
length. I answered a different question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
Should've
we
interrupted.
run into utilities all the time, you know, in our various projects. Why would this one be so unworkable? Let's put it that way. Why couldn't it stay on the side that you guys designed it?
Yeah,
And
yes.
just-
Okay. I'm sorry. I answered a different question, but hopefully that was still good information.
It was. I mean, actually, I'm glad you brought up this picture because
Yeah.
Going down that side of the road is just seems to me to be almost a no-go. I mean, it's gonna be a problem.
It's $374,000 no-go. So why couldn't we snug it next to the existing AT&T? Well, you know, when we look at this, you know, we got a trench width, right? So it's not just the 8-inch pipe. So we may have a 2-foot wide trench. So now we've got, let's just say, a foot from the center line of the pipe, you know, over. And then we've got a sewer line that unfortunately is the Phoenix Lake interceptors in this lane for most of the way. So when we tried to move our pipeline away from AT&T, we were getting too close to the sewer line. So it wasn't, I didn't mention that, but that was the other obstacle that constrained us and forced us to flop all the way over to this so we can be away from the sewer line and also AT&T.
What's the rule on how far water line has to be from the sewer line?
Well, it's 10 feet new construction, but if you use certain kinds of pipe, you can get it closer. But they generally like, that is the state generally likes to see a 10-foot separation.
Now, follow-up question on that, is that proximity change with the type of sewer pipeline it is?
No, well, it's, so if it's a new water line, it's the type of water line pipe. If it's a new sewer line, it's the type of new sewer line pipe. They don't give you credit for what kind of existing pipe is in the ground. In this case, not only is the sewer line, you know, an AC pipe, it's under pressure. So it's not like a gravity line where the chances of it really leaking outward, it's going to just percolate down. It's actually got some pressure to it. So it adds to the risk. We were forced with this decision is like, okay, let's just say we could even somehow sneak it in between the sewer and the AT&T. At that point, you're better off moving to the other side of the road because you are starting to get so far in, you're going to be stuck with a similar change order because you're going to encroach into that lane of traffic. You're getting too close to the center line, let's say. So we were kind of stuck once we saw those things. And Elizabeth, Jennifer's not here, but Elizabeth, Jennifer, and Josh walked this alignment and really analyzed few different scenarios. And the best one was we to trying to put it in a drainage ditch where we could, but there's also driveway culverts on the other side. And we were going to have to swing the pipe into the road and then back out of the road. At some point, you're trying to chase pennies, and it's not really going to be as easy to maintain if you've got a pipeline in the drainage ditch too. So just kind of walking you through the different thought processes that we had as we came up with what we currently have. And if you drive it, you'll see the markings in the road.
Is that it, Director Boatright? We're good.
I've got a couple other, now the cost of the C900 pipe, did you say that decreased from last year to this year?
I didn't. Josh, do you know?
Yeah, that just sounds like a good investment to, you know, when you see prices going up to, you got a big. The
Yeah.
second question, and certainly this is in my mind, a more affordable way for the district to move forward with this project, having changed the basic design of what the bid was. Mr. Moyle, do you still want the project?
Or Willie? The cost.
Excuse me, Josh, would you mind coming up to the dais there, please? So we can hear you a little better. Thank you. Yeah.
The microphone and turn the button on the top. And we'll turn.
So Josh Moyle. So with trying to help move this project forward, we went ahead and revised our unit cost to. It's a similar unit cost we've used on other projects, and we know what our production rates are. We know what our profitability is. We did a similar project back in 2016 on Paris Ferry Road for a force main replacement, and we were at a similar unit cost, and we made about 1.5% profit on that job. So we're not necessarily super eager to do it at this cost, but we'll be able to move forward. Things have changed with the big ones policy, allowing us to be a little bit more affordable with our backfill. Not having to use slurry helps us save on some costs. So we're hoping that will increase our profitability moving forward, but it's not going to be a great money making job. But it will be good for our crews. Like, but we will move forward if that's forward.
Okay, and last question I have. So changing to the cut side, we still face the possibility of other change orders for extreme rock or other obstacles that come up. We do. That is a vulnerability, but we have about 400 cubic yards at oil bid $100 a cubic yard in there. If we go over that 400, we've been told he'd be interested in renegotiating that unit price because, depending on the rock, $100 doesn't cover the cost to remove that rock. So it's always a bit of a gamble for them when submitting their bid. Is that rock really gonna? We had one bidder bid $1 a cubic yard on rock, just because
they're willing to take a gamble that there's no rock out there. But if there is, then, you know, they're going to lose money. And in this case, we had 400 cubic yards of rock in the bid, and we're hopeful if we don't go over that amount, we'll be within budget and there won't be a change order.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, Director Raymond?
So, this picture that you have up, where is the AT&T lines? Are they in the road or are they off on the shoulder?
In this particular case, I don't know. Elizabeth, would you be more familiar with this particular location? Because obviously it doesn't show the markings.
Yeah, so when I was out with West on site, they showed me the location of their phone line in relation to the shoulder, and they kind of winds in and out. So they're not, that's the hard part, is it's not like, oh, we're 4 feet off the edge of pavement. It goes, they might cut into the asphalt or they'll cut outside of the wide spots. It's wherever it was easy to trench is where they put that phone line. There is one marker. I've walked that thing probably 10 times since we got the board. And there's one marker with a post that was laying over in some weeds that we found while we were at night. That's about 10 feet off the roadway. But then we also have photos of when TUD's crews were out there installing the water line first phase, and it actually shows the phone line on the inside of where our proposed line. So it'll crisscross along that shoulder the whole. It's a 400 pair phone line. So, not a little.
How big a diameter would that be?
Probably not quite as big as that.
So 4 or 6 inch, something like that.
It's probably about 3.
Okay. Director Balin, you had a question?
So I'm not familiar with these roads, if they're main arteries or not in this area, and I know that projects like this are a costly inconvenience, especially if you live off of this road, but what are the chances of actually riding a detour for this road this summer so that we can work in one of those lanes?
That is something that we have talked to Public Works about, and definitely not an option. We are going to encourage residents to try to use Ridgewood to detour the project, but other than just suggesting it, there's no way we can fire them. I'm sure we can apply, but we have asked the question and
Down it. Phoenix Lake is such a thoroughfare.
Is it because of inconvenience?
Yeah, the county, and you're right. I'm not sure if this is an arterial, I'm not sure the road classification, but they're under no obligation to approve a detour request for this road. And so we have asked and we were denied, and I'm sure we'd be denied. Our crews, though, were successful in Upper Ridgewood. Traffic volumes are much less, and there's just it's easier to do that. The detour route was very simple. Even with a detour on here, you're still contending with the incoming residents at each of those driveways. So it does pose still some traffic control challenges. We also asked about night work. Hey, could this be done at night? And then, you're not dealing with the traffic volume, and then but Moyles, the way they're going to build this job, they are going to need to get asphalt from the asphalt plant, and the asphalt plant is generally open during the daytime. They don't open at night unless you've got some huge, project or a big order. So night work really wasn't in the cards for this either. I think we would have needed to be a little clearer about that in the bid process if we were going to do that.
Director Balin?
Yeah. And some of my line of questioning is coming from sensitivity towards the huge jump for the rating for the ratepayer. So framing this next question in that way, it seems to me, if I lived off this road and was asked, could you live with this inconvenience? Or we're gonna spend this or would you live with this inconvenience if we could save this amount of money? And it seems to me, the people that live up here might surprise us and say, yes, I'm willing to live with this inconvenience because this is a huge amount of money that we're all gonna have to ante up. And so so my question to you is, was this amount of change order money presented in asking for a detour for the county?
I don't know if we told the county that this was a hundreds of thousands of dollars decision. They haven't, I mean, case in point with Phoenix Lake Road paving, that there hasn't been a lot of in that regard. And only, I will say, if you look at this road, it isn't just the residents immediately along the pipeline alignment that are inconvenienced. It's an arterial road, right? So it's connecting all the way up from Cedar Ridge. So like, where do you stop asking, is this inconvenience tolerable? It's difficult to know. Plus emergency service vehicles and things like that. So we, while I can see that in a neighborhood, like a very discrete neighborhood, like Ridgewood, where, you know, we detour and the residents there, they kind of tolerate it. They've got multiple ways they can leave to go back out. In this case, I think it would be difficult to go that route, and we can certainly ask the county. But as you heard, Josh, I don't think we're going to get any deference due to cost and change their mind in terms of a detour or road closure.
Director Rainey?
So if we were to move forward with this increase, this change order, whatever you want to call it, do we have money, Steve, number one? And number two, what's it going to do to our CIP projects, Don?
So first of all, you know, this project is part of this existing year's CIP. So we've already got the 1.5 million baked into this year's CIP. I heard Eric say Josh and his crew could get started very soon, this week, next week, whatever. We typically get a lot of CIP accomplished in May and June. There are some projects out there that are potentially going to be delayed until after June 30th. So I would feel comfortable saying this change order would be adequately funded with the current year's CIP. Going forward to next year, I think that's where you were directing it to Dawn. It's kind of a different program, but if the decision is to go forward with this, you know, yes, I think there's sufficient funding within this year's CIP to cover this project. Dawn, did you have it?
Want me to answer the second part of your question?
Sure.
So giving us a lot of thought, you know, ever since, you know, Friday or Thursday when we've, you know, discovered this. And for more than a year now, you've heard most of us, especially me, talk about the implications of inflation, the cost of services, and how it's going to affect our ability to maintain the same level of service all across the board. O&M to CIP. This is reality. And so it's not just this project, but it's all CIP projects that are going to be impacted by this inflation and cost of doing business. So it's going to hurt, but that's what we said was going to happen. And here's just the reality.
Yeah, along those lines too, you know, when you called me, Dawn, and I got to looking at this and I thought, how in the world can moving a pipeline 20 feet be such an expense? But after going down there and for all the reasons you've already shown, I mean, you know, I understand that now. But the items on the back end, I think need some a little bit of a discussion too. How many treatment plants we have now, Eric? What's our treatment plants count, Don?
10 active surface
Okay.
water treatment.
And this is going to allow us to shut one down, correct? So it'll take us down to 9. And then also, I believe, at our conversation Friday, there's some pneumatic pressure systems that can be eliminated from this too. I believe it was 2.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, I mean, we essentially have 3 pump stations. One at the Scenic View Water Treatment Plant, one that's a kind of a transfer pump station near the cinder block tank, and then up above Summit. So we have 3 pump stations and another tank that would also be abandoned. This.
So, and I was going to get to those. So, so you've got, we can do away with the treatment plant. We can do away with some pneumatic pressure systems. You said another water tank we can decommission. And then also, I believe there was a piece too that allows us to gravity feed some existing tanks where we won't have to pump water. Did I get that correct?
That is the transfer pump station that I'm describing.
Okay.
This pipeline would provide adequate pressure to bypass that and fill the Summit tank. So yes, that's correct.
Okay. And so my point on all that is there's a lot of good things that are going to come out of this project. And this is a big change order. I mean, there is no doubt about it. And I totally get that. But there is an awful lot of good things that are going to come out of this project that I think we need to get done sooner rather than later. One other question I have, that sewer line and the AT&T line, is that the full, does it run the full length of Phoenix Lake Road? It does for this project. It's the full length.
At least for this project. Yes.
Yeah.
My understanding, AT&T and the sewer line both head over towards Bear Cup Drive just past. So they do cross back over. Past.
Okay. Yeah. So there's we don't run out of it at some point. It's there all the way.
We'll be smarter next time though, and we'll know where it is before we put anything out to bid.
And back to a point Barbara was bringing up about USA and trying to be more prepared. Just out of curiosity, has a situation like this ever happened before with TUD? I mean, have we been caught where we had to redesign something or change the scope at the last minute like this? I don't remember a time, but maybe there was.
It actually, Jennifer reminded me that we did run into some conflicts on the Standard Road job, but really the contractor was able to move the alignment before they saw cut the pavement, and they were able to round it. Aside from that, there's always changes, but I don't ever recall a change order of this size because of a utility that we were unaware of at design time.
Well, this isn't something that happens regularly. And it would be nice if USA would change their policy. It would be very helpful for all of us. Okay, I think I'm out of questions for now. Director Balin?
Okay, yeah, I just want to follow up on that. Couple things just to clarify your point. These will not go offline, or will they go offline when they're built, or does it depend on Sierra Pines?
I think Don has I think an opinion on how quickly we would decommission some of those, like the pump stations. I think could be decommissioned very quickly, but like the Scenic View Water Treatment Plant, I think we want to prove out, that we can operate the system under a range of demand conditions and not impact upstream storage. So we may leave Scenic View there for a time until we have that level of confidence. But I don't know, Don, if you have a different opinion.
Well, having a pretty good understanding of how, so the proposed Sierra Pines treatment plant would be in the upper basin system, right? Today, the upper basin system is fed by several water treatment plants. Lakewood, Crystal Falls, Monte Grande. So they all contribute to the upper system, the upper basin system, which ultimately scenic view treatment plant would be a part of the upper basin system. So if you're asking me this question about Ponderosa and not scenic view, my answer would be probably a little bit different, but I'm pretty confident that the demand, right? Okay, so there's that. Scenic view is also supplied partially by Apple Valley system, right? So there's quite a bit of redundancy here. All that to say that I'm fairly confident that the demand at scenic view could sufficiently be taken up by the existing upper basin system. If that was good, but we'd want to prove it out.
Sure.
Leave the plant ready to go, keep it serviced, ready to go, not spend the labor treating it, but at the ready to go and watch demands and pay attention for a few years until we understood where it was at.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify what Jeff was saying was the benefits. It's a little more complicated than that. There's going to be a longer glide path for transferring over. So it's not just going to be immediate. Oh, good, we can take all this off. We need this project. We need this project so we can. So it's a little more rushy. Okay. My question, follow-up question is, in prevention, you know, it's where we can really save money is heads up and heading things off with their little deals before they get to a bigger deal. I'm just wondering about the cost of hiring a private utility you know, outfit that can suss this stuff out ahead of time or design. And what are we paying USA? No offense to USA, but we need this during design. It's true, it's all spaghetti out there. And we've got a one, you know, policy, you know, we only want to pave it once. The inconvenience to our residents is colossal. We have changing demographics where we may not even be allowed, even though we have more water reliability up there. We use less water up there, according to our data. We use more water for outdoor, the further, you know, down slope you go, but yet fire insurance stuff is going to kick in up there. So at any rate, there's a lot that we consider, and for our buck, how much would it cost to have somebody go out there and take a look at this ahead of time versus how much we're paying for this service that doesn't include design? And maybe we're better off just going with somebody that can build our own database so we can see where this stuff is ahead of time.
I don't have a good answer for you. I'm not sure, but UtiliQuest is kind of a third party that AT&T has a contract with. So they would be someone, and prevention would be better, especially in this case. Even better would just be if USA changes their policy. I don't think we pay a lot to USA, but it's, I mean, we provide labor. The member agencies provide all the labor. USA is just the clearinghouse. They're just the program, the algorithm that shoots this all out and informs everyone. But yeah, in an ideal world, we would have USA change their policy, which I understand they're considering. And then we would locate for design, and we would send a surveyor out there. We're doing all of our survey work, and they would actually tie out all the paint marks on the pavement. And then if we had a vertical conflict depth, you know, they have ground penetrating radar, other, you know, technologies, but sometimes, and we have before just done pothole as a line item in the bid, pothole, just investigative digging. So that the contractor does that earlier on, or we have our own crews do it, you know, as part of the design. So we know if we have vertical conflict. But these are all things that we'll be looking to implement a little more rigorously on projects. Like, we're usually not in Phoenix Lake Road. We're usually not in Standard Road. Ridgewood, easy. But we're getting into more and more congested areas. If we're in downtown Sonora, it's going to be really important that we know all of our conflicts.
Eric, there's one other thing too about the USA. I believe you guys pay a fee to be notified of it, say not necessarily to contractor, it's free to me, call it in. But for TUD, you guys pay, be notified that there is an alert, not necessarily pay for a service to locate.
Thank you. Yeah. We're trying to protect our facilities. That's why. Yeah. Thank you.
Director Boatright?
Dawn, Apple Valley is a standalone well system, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
No, it's supplying water. I didn't realize that we were actually supplementing Summit and that area with well water.
Doesn't quite go to Summit tank. So going way back in time, since my arrival here in 2000, there always was a tiny intertie between Apple Valley and Upper Hillview tank, which is historically we used to call it tank and a half. Silly. But anyway, so there was always an intertie there. And for one reason or another, maybe the water quality at Phoenix Lake was terrible. So we had to turn down or turn off the Scenic View water treatment plant because of the plant, the inability to treat the water. We'd have to turn the intertie on. It's very manual. Handful of times in my operations, leaving something in hand wasn't a good idea, and the tank overflows, caused a big mess, blah, 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 blah. So about 5 or 6 years ago, we improved the intertie to be more automatic. It's an automatic intertie. And then since then, at that time, we also developed Apple Valley well number 3, which is a very high producing well. And so we're able to, again, offset some of the demand off the Scenic View water treatment plant on a permanent basis. It only goes down to about what bridge? Some bridge. On Meadowbrook Drive. It's only a portion of the demand from Scenic View. Yes.
And the Scenic View water treatment plant that also supplies water over across Highway 108 to McDonald's and that East Sonora area as well.
Yes. At the old site of the old cinder block tank, which is offline, demolished now, there's a in-ground station that boosts water up to the Summit tank. And yeah, from the Summit tank, a portion of that water goes across the highway, like you said, down to Tractor Supply and McDonald's.
And that water can all be then supplied through from the upper basin once that.
Correct.
So you're saying that it's going to be pretty immediate that Summit just goes into a dormant state, or Scenic View water treatment plant goes dormant in standby mode right off the bat on completion of this pipeline?
Correct. I know we sort of glossed over it, but during the TWSOP, we evaluated everything, right? What's the alternatives for maintaining or rehabbing all of the treatment plants? At the time, there were 13 we were talking about. I think at least 13. What's the cost benefit to just rebuild every treatment plant and every clear well and every tank compared to some sort of consolidation effort? So it was really clear in the TWSOP, Treated Water System Optimization Plan, that it was more cost effective long-term to consolidate. Okay, so that's many, many years ago. And both the treatment plant and the clear well are in very poor condition. The upside of that clear well, it's still welded, not still bolted, but it's been rehabbed a few times and it's in really poor shape. And it's a decision point. I wouldn't want to see that tank online another 5 years. I just won't. We'll have to do something with it, and it's several $100,000 endeavor. So to your question, yes, immediately we turn that treatment plant off and turn that clear well off, and all those booster stations begin to realize some cost savings. So no labor towards treatment, no capital improvement for upgrading the tank or the treatment plant or those booster stations.
Mr. Moyle, what's the duration of this project is time-wise as far as anticipated completion?
So we're going through our numbers. We were estimating anywhere 40 to 50 working days. Completed. Put us past.
It's going to be right there. Yeah. But I mean, we have 70 working days, or we have 70 calendar days in the contract. I think originally. So we might spill over into next fiscal year, but if he can get started soon, most of the main line will be in, most of the big expense will be in.
Right now, our schedule is to start Sunday night with the high-end location. That work at night help with the customer. So we are scheduled Sunday night to start. If
Any other director comments or questions? Okay, we'll open it up to public forum. Anybody like to discuss something here live? How about online, Corey?
Not as you.
Okay, we'll close the public forum and we'll bring it back to the board. Director Rangan.
So reluctantly, but after hearing all of this in detail, I'd like to make a motion that the general manager executed change order in the amount of $374,405 with Moyle Excavation for the Ridgewood Pipeline Project.
Okay,
I would second that.
okay. We got a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Moyle. Appreciate you coming in. All right. Okay, moving on, Melissa.
Okay, item number 3, posted budget reports on the balance sheet reported in March 30th.
Mr. Steve, is that you?
Hello, your finance director. Good news is there's no action. Information only. Yeah. All right. So what we're presenting today is the budget report, challenge, third quarter. Pursuant to the board adopted county auditing reporting policy, financial report comparing budgeted to actual, income and balance. I'll be prepared, delivered to and reviewed with the board of directors. Thank you. I was doing that on purpose. So that said, this is the same format this board has seen, consistent with previous quarters. Without Director Jacobs here, we don't need to do a lot of time explaining that. But I've just got a few slides here to go over, slightly different than your board packet. But the first one, this slide, let me close this down. This slide presents total combined revenue, meaning water and sewer all together. Total revenues received were 19.5 million. And essentially, if you look at the columns here, the first column's the current total budget for the whole year. The fiscal activity is the 9 months ending March 31st, then a variance. So theoretically, if we were earning money exactly the same month after month, there should be 25% remaining. So at the top of the majority of our revenues is due to utility billing. We're right at 24%. Some of the other items are really, the variances are due to timing, property taxes, a little bit off from that 25%. And that's just how we receive the money from the county. And the same thing going down. And towards the bottom, you'll see the capital grants, the contributed capital and the capacity charges. Those aren't budgeted items because they're strictly for CIP. And so it's just as the revenue is recognized on those. Feel free to stop me anytime, but like I said, there's only a few slides here so we can circle back as well. The next slide presents total combined expenses. Total combined expenses were 13.6 so far through this. Of note is it's approximately $2 million more than the same time period last year. The biggest difference is personnel. And that difference is due to several factors, but first and foremost, as our construction crews are working on CIP projects, That forced labor is charged directly to the project, so it doesn't show up here. And so far through the 9 months, there's been 654,000 of our labor charged directly to the CIP projects. There are still some unfilled positions in there as well. As to the other categories, there's a big variance in services that relates directly to consultants and ties into the PG&E acquisition, some of the other things we had budgeted for this year. And then general and admin is a big difference there, which also has to deal with some of the legal aspects of the acquisition that were in that. I added a new slide this time just because we've been talking about it each meeting for the past 4 months here. But in putting this together, I just mentioned total expense is up $2 million compared to the same time last year. That's about a 17% increase. Variety of reasons. First of all, personnel is up $1 million, 13%. Part of that's overtime due to the weather events we had and everything else. Part of it's due to increases in health insurance costs, increases in retirement costs, kind of a variety, if you will, there. Supplies up 350,000, which is at 28%. I think that's directly inflation related, like we've heard on there. Clearly, chemicals is one that really jumped up 163,000 or 59%. And that's just over the last year. If you go back the last 2 or 3 years, the numbers are even, more sizable than that. Repairs is consistent with supplies, 53%. And then finally, you've heard me talk about before, utilities, mainly electricity, is up 29% as well.
Questions, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. I've noticed in our claim summary on personnel, a jump in the retirement amount. Is that from, it seemed like, high end was like 19 something a month to like now it's 24 a month. Is that a correct
So
summary percentage?
when you say the fund summary, you're talking the claim
Yes.
report where we're paying the retirees?
Correct.
Yeah. A couple factors, I think, and Abby chime in if you need to, but one, we have more retirees than we've had over the past years. 2, there was a health insurance increase this year. So essentially what happens is, that goes out through PERS, and then we bill we pay the retirees back for their portion that they're paying in that. So that has gone up over the past several years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it's really when you see the retirees, that's specifically retirees' health insurance.
Okay, thanks.
So this next slide is kind of the summary or the catch-all. What do the 2 previous slides really mean to us? And if we just take that total revenue I talked about and that total expense, we have a net of 5.9 million. Okay, that sounds good. That's positive, right? But I have to remind everybody that when we adopted the budget a year ago, we adopted a budget with almost $3 million deficit in there if we accomplished everything and we budget everything. So what I'm showing here is that there's 5.9 million so far on CIP. We've spent $16 million for the 9 months. Now, as soon as I say that, I say, well, whoa, we're way over that $3 million deficit. What happened? Well, you have to take into account those grant funded projects. In that prior slide, I showed about $750,000 or $760,000 of grant revenue we've recognized. But then you have to remember, we've got a $25 million loan for the sewer plant. And we also have an $8.5 million grant from USDA that we haven't realized yet. That's the very end. Once we build the plant, once we spend it, then we get the grant from them. We paid our money first. Now we're paying it out of this construction loan and the COPs and bonds we issued. Then we'll get that grant. So here I'm kind of showing that 14 million as coming back in. And then we have remaining 5 million still to do. And we're looking at that and that 5 million going into this budget. We really anticipate completing almost all of that in the next 2 months. There may be about $1 million, I think, last time we looked at it, that may not be, depending on the timing. But then finally, we have the debt payment of 173,000 still to make. So if we just kind of stopped right now for the whole year, we would be negative 1.9 million. So that's better than the 2.9 that we planned on. But that's just kind of where the balance sits. Now, again, a lot of uncertainty out there. What's going to happen with the specific CIP projects? What's going to happen with availability? What's happening with inflation? Some supplies, you can see the yard's full of pipe right now. Other items we're still trying to get. And so we're still working on that. Final slide I have for you. I realize you can't read this, but it is in your board packet. Several, I guess 3 quarters ago, one of the requests was to provide a CIP status report with this financial one. So I believe this is the 3rd time we've presented it to you. I'll just point out that the way we've sorted this is the first column shows the adopted budget for this year. And we sorted that from highest to lowest. And if you can look right at the top, we budgeted 1.9 for the Ridgewood transmission line. So, and that involves both our guys as well as the outside contract with Moyle. So that's where I was referring to. We have money budgeted for that project. And then going across, it shows what we've actually spent, non-labor. Labor is our labor, wouldn't be Moyle's, they'd be outside. And then a total we spent so far, that's where the 16 million I just referred to comes from. And then basically that last column is what the material budget remaining is. We don't budget our forced labor because we're not sure whether our guys will be working on it or not. And so what was budgeted, some projects we did budget based on forced labor, but what you're seeing in this budget column is the outside cost, meaning our guys' cost is included in the overall budget, whether they're working on CIP or not. And so that far right column is where we're saying, well, here's what's remaining. And then down at the very bottom is where I take into account the grant and the completed. And that's where that remaining amount on the previous slide, the 5 million shows up. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I guess if I had to summarize it for the board, as I've said to you over the past 4 months, and especially the last 6 months, ongoing concern continues to get worse, continues to be a projected large deficit for next year, ties in with all our projections we presented with the rate study. It's real hard now. We only have 2 more months. There's not a lot we can do on here other than some projects may get delayed, some projects may get held, some projects we may really want to prioritize and get to that. But we're at this point staying within the adopted budget. But I would remind you, we adopted a budget with a $3 million deficit, and I would prefer not to realize that or accomplish that goal. But we're on track. Things are tracking here. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No, I think it was pretty clear.
Thank you.
Do we need to open this to public comment for a review item? Okay, go ahead and open the public comment. Elena, you got anything? Okay. Corey, anybody online? Okay, we'll close the public comment. All right, well. We need a motion to accept that or not? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to accept Steve's report.
Move.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept and file the report. All those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Thanks, Steve. Next item, Melissa.
Okay, item number 4, update on reserve operations in March 2023.
Good morning, board. Eric Hall, Operations Director. We'll go over last month again. We have 2 corrections on this one. The first one's going to be on page 2, the raw water customers. The number is inflated a little bit. So it's 597 customers on the ditch. We'll get that fixed going forward now. And then the other correction is going to be on the wastewater treatment. It's last month. So if you need, we can forward you the updated version of that if you'd like. But we'll start with the raw water. They were extremely busy with floating snow. Pretty much every department helped floating snow, shoveling snow, plowing, getting out, trying to get water flowing anywhere, everywhere we could. Then the rain came. So it helped in places because we never really completed floating snow on all the ditches. We had to stop and prep for the rain and start pulling spills out throughout the whole system. So the rain helped, got the water flowing, then it was too much. Then we started overflowing. We had every single ditch was shut off, every single spill was open, every single cross gate was closed. And we still had overflows in multiple locations. So it was a lot of water. They did the best they could do. They worked a lot of hours. You know, all the crews did all over the place. We were able to use our mutual assistance agreement with Twain Hart. We got them some gunny sacks to help with their flooding that they were having around the district there. That kind of a good thing, but. In the water treatment side, with all the rain and snow, they struggled making water. It's, Dawn can explain it better than I could, but the treatment plants don't like the rain and the snow, the runoff there. So they were working lots of hours trying to keep the water going through the plants, running around filling generators, making sure that all the little hydro stations were up and running, you know, with the distribution guys all over the place. Even though they were super busy working all kinds of overtime, they were still able to keep going with the Sonora water treatment plant upgrades, which actually was great news because it's up and running now. In the distribution department, again, they were helping everywhere they could, kept up with their normal daily routine stuff, helped float snow, helped on the hydro stations, anywhere that they could be helped with plowing, all kinds of different things. And again, they were able to help with that, keep up with their normal daily routines. And then like with the flushing around the distribution system where we could, as we were treating water, trying to keep up with the tanks. One of the capital improvement projects that got done was the Crystal Falls Cedar Ridge intertie. That was used multiple times this year when the main canal went down. We were able to put water from Cedar Ridge back down into Crystal Falls, which was a huge help because it saved us. So in one of the storms, there was a mudslide on the main canal up a South Fork Road. So again, we had to shut all the ditches off and then shut the inlets to the plants because the water was so dirty, they couldn't make water anywhere. So that was a huge benefit because it was 5 or 6 days. We waited for that water to clean up and let PG&E get in there and clean the debris out. So big bonus there. Construction maintenance, they didn't get a ton of projects done, but they had some big leaks. Middle camp, there are some trees that fell, ripped out a techite line up there, and it created a washout and then took out another 80 feet of water line. So it took us 3 days to get in there to get it fixed. We had to get the all clear from PG&E before the county could get in there and plow, and before we could get in there to make the repairs. So once that all happened, that was good. They jumped in there, they got it done. Mostly in a day. They got it fixed, a piece of it blew apart, and they came back the next morning and the final tie-in, we got everybody back in water. Then we had another one on Charlotte Court, had a mudslide. It took out a 4-inch AC line down the hill. They got there that night and fixed it and then came back a couple days later and reinforced the bank so that water line would stay there. See, they also were a big help. We had a couple mudslides on the ditch. We had to rent a mini excavator to get down into the ditch to dig it out because it was a pretty substantial slide. We had to get tree crews out to help get some of the hazard trees that came down with the mudslide. So a lot. They were very busy. Wastewater collections, those guys were extremely busy themselves. They had some different lift stations they were flooding because there was so much water sheet runoff. It filled everything up. Willow Springs, there's some customer side lines that run through the creek. One of them had broke. Flooded the Willow Springs lift station, so they had to call in a septic hauler. Basically to run through the night so that wouldn't overflow. They just ran and ran and ran. Jamestown, JSD also had some issues. Their old plant, they have some water storage basins there. Well, Woods Creek filled up and started spilling into that. It was getting ready to overflow. So we used our mutual assistance agreement with them. Went down there with our septic haulers, trucks, and I think 6 other companies, and they hauled all night long back up to regional so that they wouldn't overflow into the creek down there. And then the wastewater treatment, like I said, that's going to be one of the changes. They'll send it to you, but Quartz Reservoir is 83% capacity, about a little under 1,300 acre feet. So again, then they were busy. We had pumps set up at regional, pumping from the emergency storage basin over to the aeration basins because the inflows were so high there too. We couldn't get enough water out. So it's good that we had some extra storage there. Up at the Twainhart wastewater treatment plant, we had pumps set up, pumping from the aeration basin to the effluent pond there. Had some valving done. We could get extra water out. Twainhart CSD did help us man those pumps. So that inflow, obviously it comes from them. So we were in communication with them. They were out and about trying to find some INI and slow the inflow down. So that's about it. The crews are extremely busy. They did a great job and on we go.
Director Ringen.
So once again, well, first of all, I want to compliment staff, you and staff. This is really a great ops report. But I noticed that last month that some of the couple of the water treatment plants actually were producing more than last year, which is really surprising to me considering how much water and everything we got. But is it right for me to assume that it's because of the mainline breaks possibly, and also the flushing of the system?
Yeah, mainline breaks, flushing, and we do believe that we know there was a lot of leaks out there that we never found on the private side. And then people will run water when it's really cold, so their pipes don't leave the faucet cracked.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'd just like to tag on to what Director Ringen said there. I mean, looking at the water ops report for March, Crystal Falls peak raw NTUs 130. Last year at this time it was 10. It's 13 times higher. That's chocolate milk.
Yep.
You're taking chocolate milk and you're squeezing that stuff out of there, treating it, and it's coming out crystal clear so that we can all drink.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that needs to be acknowledged because that's not easy to do. And hats off to the crews. And then the Herculean effort that it must have been to fix that middle camp break, dealing with the PG&E, dealing with the county, dealing with that washout with the additional 80 feet. I mean, I'm not sure that any of us that didn't see it or partake in it even imagine how difficult that had to be. So again, hats off to the crew. And then I would imagine Director Boatwright could speak to this, but just the inflow to the sewer side as well had to be just ridiculous. I mean, so it's all phases of what we do here, and or what the crews do, not we, but with a storm like that, all the work that goes in there so that we can drink our water, flush our toilets, and everything else that goes along with it is I'm proud to be a part of this and proud of our staff and glad that they're out there standing guard on all this stuff. So anyway, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Appreciate it, Eric. Okay, next item, Melissa.
Water.
Right, well, time for your monthly update on the project. We spent a little more time last month, so I'll be much briefer unless there's any questions. It's, you know, you can see the pictures in your packet there. There's been a fair amount of progress that's been made, especially in building A. If you walk into building A, which is the admin building, you'll see the drywall's up, paint's up, receptacles, outlets, you know, are in, the floor's been polished. It's starting to really take shape. So that's kind of one of the more notable things. We are sitting at 25.7 million spent, which is right there at about 60%. I think we were like maybe 57, 58. We weren't that much different about a month ago, and things have just transitioned at the site as they're going from really working indoors and finishing the building A. And so there's a little delay in our invoicing from the contractor, but we're at 60%. We're at about 5 months delay, and I think I told the board that last time. So we're hopeful that maybe we can make up some ground this summer, and some of the issues with procurement have relaxed a little bit in terms of our headwork screen. We were waiting for that, and that may be delivered a little bit ahead of schedule. But you know, there's a lot of things left to be done, a lot of potential for some other delays. So I don't want to get everybody hopes up. Building B, if you drive down the highway, you'll see that they put up the roof joists, and that second floor, if you will, is where our dewatering screw press will be located. And that's why that building is as tall as it is. That will sit there. We'll take our digested solids, sludge, if you will, into that unit, and it will run through the screw press, and the dewatered cake solids will drop right into a trailer that's parked immediately underneath it. The aeration lines to the basins, they were working on that just last week, and there's some pictures in your report of that. And the baffles for the chlorine contact basin will be going in here soon. We're really hoping to get basically over the next number of weeks, we're hoping to get the roof on thing B, so that then they can start working indoor there, and finalizing our connection with PG&E. So we've had an inspection with PG and passed that, which that was taking forever to do. So we're happy about that. Aside from that, the project's going well. We survived the winter. As Eric said, there was a lot of things going on, high flows into our plant, and high stormwater flows around the site that the contractor is technically responsible to deal with. So we're very happy to be out of the winter season, and hopefully they'll be able to make up some ground here this summer.
Any questions? Eric? Okay. Thanks for the update, Garrett. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Melissa, next item.
Item number 6, work was selected.
Okay, that'd be me. And yeah, I held off on these committee appointments because we didn't have a full slate of directors, but now that we've the county appointed Director Jacobs to our 5th spot, went ahead and released these. So just to go over them real quick, Ditch Committee, Director Balin will be the chairman, along with Director Ringen. Water, again, Director Balin is the chair, with myself as also the other member. Wastewater Regional Sewer Advisory Committee, Director Boatwright is the chair, and Director Jacobs will serve with him. And the Community Watershed, Erwin Black, Director Ringen is the chair, and I'll be serving with him as well. There was two committees that I chose not to continue this year. One was finance. Director Bodak and I talked about it several months ago. And also I spoke with Steve Sheffield about this. And it just seemed like it was very redundant because everything we talked about and did always had to come up before the full board anyway. So rather than take Steve's time and our time, I felt it would probably be better off just to leave that one off. Future presidents can do whatever they want, but that was my decision on that. Also, the HR department or the HR, not department, the HR committee. I decided not to fill that one as well after speaking with General Manager Perkins. And I know he also spoke with you, Abby. And so we decided to leave that off. If there is something that comes up that we need to be addressed, that would normally come under that committee, then we can form an ad hoc committee to do that. So that was my thinking on that. The other representations for TUD on here that I appointed for Mountain Counties, Director Balin, she's done a great job on that, and we appreciate her time. Mountain Counties Resource Association, the Legislative Committee, Director Ringen, again, very familiar with that, and he's been doing that for some time. We appreciate it. The Integrated Regional Water Management Plan, JPIA Board, or JPA Board, again, is Director Ringen. LAFCO, I put Director Jacobs on that. He's going to be our representative for that. And Don, that seat, you and I spoke the other day, that seat for TUD is good for the end, till the end of this year or until next June?
Till May.
May of 24. So TUD has that seat until then, and then we will rotate off, and I believe Groveland comes on after that. Groveland Community Services.
For 4 years. Steve will have her for 4 years. As it
Correct. Okay.
one thing that Director Boat and I learned, or maybe you already knew this, but you see that there's not an alternative there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we kind of thought if somebody couldn't make it, we'd send it to you person in spot. Well, whereas the way LAFCO's formation bylaws or whatever, they have an alternate already there. So that is the alternative.
For the Aqua JPIA, which has to do with our insurance. I've been the representative the last 2 years or since we became part of the JPIA. So I'm more than happy to continue to do that. The Tuolumne County Water Policy Advisory Committee, General Manager Perkins will be our representative there, and I'll be the alternate. And then same goes with the City of Sonora Oversight Board. General Manager Perkins will be handling that. I'll be the alternate as well. And that's it for that. If anybody has any questions about any of those. Okay. All right. So we're done with that. Move on to staff reports, huh, Melissa?
Okay. A terribly busy couple of weeks, but of note, on the 11th, I took a tour of the Ponderosa water system with Kevin Day. We're all familiar with Kevin Day. He's now back with the tribe. He retired for a couple of years, but now he's TUD, the Tuolumne Economic Development Authority portion of the tribe. They brought him back as more of a mentor. He's he wanted, and I felt like he needed a better understanding of how the water gets to the reservation. So it was nice. I spent, I don't know, 2 hours with him. We drove up to the Tuolumne, to the Ponderosa water treatment plant and just kind of took a visual of that treatment plant. The takeaway there was, the plant's it's in good shape, really. Trevor and his team are doing an amazing job of somehow keeping the termites at bay. I'm not sure how they're doing it, but they're doing a good job. But that plant is limited on its number of days, along with the 2 clear wells. Both clear wells are in poor condition. So from there, we drove up to the site of the Rainbow in-ground reservoir. We talked about how it serves the Muller water system that sits between Ponderosa and Tuolumne. And then, I talked to him, mentioned to him that Muller's in the process of trying to procure some grant monies to upgrade your system through a consolidation grant effort with the state. So we think they're going to get there, but like like a lot, we're just waiting for the word that's gonna happen, so. From there, I took a trip to the Skyline tank and showed him 600,000 gallon newish tank that we have in the area and how that actually served the reservation. I pointed out, although you can't see it, but the location of all the very small diameter lines that feeds the reservation, which contributes to the fire flow issues that they have on the reservation. That's kind of the overall goal for the tribe, not just fire flow, but fire flow is a high priority of theirs to improve their fire flow situation, which is why they are in the middle of, they did secure some grant fundings to put, I don't know, maybe 10,000 feet. That sounds like a high number, but anyway, many thousands of feet of new fire water lines in the reservation with new fire hydrants. So that's kind of the nature of why we went on this tour. And then we talked about, possible projects where we can partner to further improvements to the system that benefits the tribe. So it was good. Kevin, he's been around forever, obviously, but he didn't really have an understanding of how that system fed the reservation system. And he encouraged me to have another tour. Barbara and I took a tour about a year ago with Reba to do the same sort of thing. And it is eye opener, right? Unless you really walk and see that, it's difficult to really kind of imagine what we're up against there. So also in the last couple of weeks, we've had several meetings, internal meetings, Steve and I, several meetings, just him and I, but with the other managers, either one-on-one or in groups, just kind of going over. This is this time of the year where we work on both the CIP and the O&M budget, with the challenges with the inflation and not knowing where we're going to be with the rate increase. So it's been a bit of a challenging on one hand, but on the other hand, I'll tell you, one set of meetings we had in particular, I just kind of had this aha moment that I felt was really good. Eric Johnson had organized a kind of a CIP discussion as it pertains to tanks and distribution systems, so we could rank them and talk about them. But I think he intended a 1 hour meeting. It ended up being 2 meetings that encompassed 3 hours. And in those 3 hours, we talked about 47 tanks, right? And how we're going to prioritize sort of maintenance or we were going to do on those tanks. The beauty of it was, I really felt there was a good opportunity for myself, Eric Hall, Matt Nolte, Trevor Cowden to impart this knowledge, this institutional knowledge we talk about on Gadiel and Elizabeth and the rest of the team. We really dove deep into an understanding of the legacy tanks and how the tanks came about, what their useful life, what their life was like in the early days compared to today because of regulation change, and why one tank's much more of a priority than another tank. And so over and over again in these discussions, I'd have somebody I won't mention names, hey, we can't, we got to prioritize some of the tanks, these newer tanks that we have. We need to get them on a maintenance schedule so they don't end up being very poor condition too. While that's very true, the simple fact is we're up against a time clock here. We have really poor tanks that are going to fail on us. So it's a race against the clock to get our tanks in the good condition. That wasn't the point of this discussion. Was more so that it was, although it's a challenging time for us, I think we took the opportunity to really transfer some institutional knowledge that's going to relate well for decades later. 4/16 on a Sunday, I got the opportunity to spend 4 hours at the Home and Garden Show. And I've been to several of those over the years. This one for me just felt better. I think, we had a steady stream of people for the entire 4 hours. Largely the conversations were positive. Lots of questions about how I get my water. Why does my water taste this way? When my friend up the hills water tastes that way. And but some people had heard about the pending rate increase while they weren't happy with it. If they spent, 5 minutes talking to one of us about, the need, they said, well, I don't like it anymore, but at least I understand it. So for being here and explaining it to me. So all in all, I think the Home and Garden Show was a success, and Emily did a fantastic job with our booth. And we had some great I won't call them volunteers, other staff that hadn't got the opportunity to go to the Home and Garden Show. Alicia and Shell and April, Matt Nolte, some newbies there, and they did a great job. Those folks and a lot of other people they really represent the district really well. It's really happy how that turned out. Like something else. On 4/17, I met with the forest supervisor Jason Kiken and Martinez. Just because I think it's important for them and us to keep, checking in on each other, our projects, what's going on. But in particular, I wanted to begin to talk with them about, of course, we're going to need their support and partnership here, but some of the reservoir up high in the watersheds. It's just the opening discussions with them and many other agencies, partner agencies as we move forward. But it was a good, I only spent 45 minutes with them, but it was a good conversation. End of my report.
Okay, any questions for Don? I got a couple comments. That's great news about Kevin. I'm glad he's back involved with the tribe again. He's got a lot of knowledge there, and it's good to hear that he's back involved.
Yeah.
Also, I know you'll keep us up to date on the Mueller situation. I think I'm very interested in that. Being a ratepayer who has that line item on my bill about a special assessment. I'm very hopeful that procedure for Mueller to be able to turn their system over to TUD. I hope it goes as planned and is successful, because that is in my opinion, a very good blueprint for future solutions for some of these systems that find themselves in trouble and want to be taken over by TUD. So I hope that works. So
We'll keep you posted.
yep. Thank you, Don. Okay, who's next?
So multiple 3 or 4 FEMA meetings. Still going up, still compiling information to give to them. We'll be starting the round 2 tomorrow with them. So just keep moving forward. Let's see. And then last week went to the operational area county pre-fire meeting. So that's basically everybody's involved, other water districts, fire department, county, roads, everything like that. So learned what they've kind of got going, what CAL FIRE's thinking as far as the fire season goes. So that's good. Had a couple CARB meetings. So it's about the non-emission vehicles going forward. We're in a coalition, just learning what's happening as things are coming out and as the rules are being brought forward. So we're going with that. That's all I have.
Sorry, anybody have a question for Eric? I do. In 30 seconds, tell us about the CARB rules there on the, what is it, no emission vehicles?
No, yeah, non-emission vehicles. Right now it's slated by 2027. Anything we buy above 8,000 pound gross vehicle weight has to be non-emission vehicle.
Above 8,000?
Yeah,
8 or above.
8 or above. 8,000 and above.
So right now, is there even a dump truck available to buy that's a non-emission vehicle? Today?
There is very limited supply and the cost is unreal.
That's a lofty goal.
Yes.
Okay, we'll have to see how that turns out.
Yeah, there's.
If I can, this has got us all concerned. I alerted, I think CSDA, Justin. I alerted, that's county, I'm sorry. A few other agencies, our local partner agencies here, Calaveras County Water District was on this as well. So we've joined a couple of coalitions, and Eric's part of one, kind of a working group. So we're really hopeful that there's some logical amendments to this rule. It isn't official yet, but it comes down as is. We're just in trouble.
And this will not affect our current fleet, correct?
Well, I mean, 27 is only a few years away, and we're talking,
Yeah, but
talking about a 5-year CIP. So.
But I mean, if you've got I don't know the status of our fleet, but if we have a newer dump truck, for instance, I mean, we don't have to divest ourselves of that and buy a new one in 2027.
Yeah, so it's by the time you buy it, good for you.
Okay. Okay.
The logic is right now.
Yeah, and when I said lofty goal, I have no doubt that at some point there will be very viable solutions for heavy vehicles to be electrically powered. However, to get it done so that that's all we can purchase by 2027, that's the lofty goal I meant.
Now, even purchasing the vehicle, I'm worried about the infrastructure for charging stations.
Mhm.
That stuff going forward's very, very concerning.
Well, keep us posted, Eric. I'm sure you will. Director Balin, do you have a question?
Yeah, along those lines, and I know some of us on the board are wanting us to be really proactive in terms of the smaller utility vehicles. Because it seems to me we can demonstrate a savings with some of the smaller utilities that are mostly staying on paved surfaces, let's say. And the cumulative points, if you will, that might offset one of these bigger vehicles. I looked at those. And yeah, they're there, but they're like 78,000. I think that was a used one. So somebody tried it out and went, you know, and it was on the market. And so they're really costly, but yeah, the wolf's at our door. It seems to me some of these smaller surface vehicles, it would be great to demonstrate to the public that we were committed to this in an affordable, not at a last minute, here goes all our CIP way.
Yeah, that part's tough, talking with the mechanics too. We have to revamp the mechanic shop. Do that. So we have a lot to learn in a short amount of time and how we're gonna get this all going.
Thank you, Eric.
I'll tag in next, just a couple important items. You know, I'm the weakest in terms of knowledge of this discussion with electric vehicles and everything else, but you know, I'm old school. I look around and PG&E doesn't have a single electric vehicle driving around. AT&T doesn't, Comcast doesn't. If all these big profit players are unable to do this, how are we going to do this? How's Groveland going to do this? How's Jamestown going to do this? I don't know. And the availability is just not there. So it's one thing our mechanics can't work on. We can't charge it. We can't buy it. We can't get it, but we're all going to have to do it. It's coming and I'm convinced, but you know, we as a nation have some huge hurdles and all we can do is stay informed and do this. But, you know, I'm waiting for some of these other ones. You know, what's the state of California doing? You know, what's the county doing? What are these other ones? And hopefully we can get some cooperative stuff to make it be reasonable. Because right now it's just not reasonable for us. But enough of that. I'm off my soapbox, I know. But a couple of real important things for you all is that, you know, in addition to the day-to-day stuff, like Don alluded to it, we're fully on working on the fiscal year 24 budget. You know, if you go back to our timeline, the goal is to have Dawn and us finalize the budget by May 5th. I believe that's next week. And so we're working on that. I believe Melissa sent out an email yesterday. We'd like to have a special board meeting on May 16th. Same time, it's in between the two other meetings. Historically, for the past decade, we've always had a separate board meeting to talk about the budget and talk about CIP. So tentatively, we penciled that in for May 16th. That allows us time if we need some additional work. The goal is always to adopt the budget by the first meeting in June 13th. Now, if that wasn't enough, day after tomorrow, we're printing, and we're not printing. We've hired a printer to print the public notice to the ratepayers, to all our customers, and that will be mailed Thursday, the 27th. Everyone should start receiving it within a couple of days typically, and that'll open a whole new, you know what, as far as feedback and information and doing that. That runs for 45 days. So the public hearing is tentatively scheduled, another special meeting for June 14th, day after we're going to adopt the budget. That public hearing will be when we will report back the protests we've received. That will be a public hearing inviting the community to come in and give their feedback directly to the board. It'll be like an open public hearing. When the public hearing's closed, we'll do an official count. At that time, the board will take whatever action the board decides on the rates. And that if something is enacted on the 14th, those new rates would become effective August 1st for this year. That's the soonest we could do it. Going forward for subsequent years, they would be effective July 1st. So just an update for the board.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Any questions for Steve? Okay, who's next? Abby.
Good morning, everyone. I'm gonna piggyback on what Dawn talked about with regards to the Home and Garden Show. That was a couple of weekends ago. Yes, Emily did a fantastic job representing the district well. The booth was amazing. We crossed all spectrums of the district, from the raw water system to reclamation. And thank you, Director Ringen, for being there for about a half a day on Saturday. Really appreciate you being there. We had Emily, of course, was there. I was there on Saturday. Matt Nolte, distribution superintendent, was there on Saturday. And then April Franklin, who's our customer service supervisor, was there, did a fantastic job. Both Matt and April I worked with, and just really cool to see people outside of TUD in the community sharing their knowledge, being able to answer any question that members of the public had. And then on Sunday, Felicia Finn, who is our customer service representative, did an awesome job as well answering questions. We had Michelle Perkins and Dawn Perkins, and then Emily came back and kind of rounded out the weekend. So just want to thank all of them for stepping up and really representing the district well. Great experience. We did have some really tough questions. Matt Nolte and I spent about 20 minutes with the gentleman who finally at the end, I think he wanted to stump us, and finally at the end he said, I guess that's it. So anyway, it's just really nice to get outside and work with different people and just really positive experience. So and then I just wanted to give some kudos to a couple of other employees here. Jack Morey in our construction maintenance department just obtained his Class A CDL. Young guy just coming into the district less than a year ago, has already gotten his distribution certification. And we have stringent requirements when we hire folks in that don't have certifications. They have to get on those certifications immediately. Don't let any grass grow under their feet, because that is a condition of continued employment. So I'm just really proud of these guys and really getting studying and making sure that they have the requirements that are necessary. And then finally, got an email from Kalisha last week with a gentleman who called in just highly complimenting Albert Matlock and Nick Hayden in our distribution department. They went out and changed a customer meter out, and he was just tickled with what great service they had and knowledge they had when he had lots of questions about his service and everything. So just wanted to compliment them. So that is the end of my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abby. Any questions? Okay. Is there any other staff reports? Okay, we'll move on to Director's Communications. Who wants to start? Director Ringen.
I guess I can. I only have one thing that's already been covered pretty well, and that I did attend and participate in the Home and Garden Show. And I've been to every one of them that TUD has participated in when they were before COVID and all that. And I would say this one, I was expecting the worst, and actually I think this one was the best. Yeah, we got a few complaints and so on, but you always are. And but there was a lot of questions, and it made it it shows that people are really thinking, and they want to know. So at any rate, I just thought it was pretty much an upbeat show. There was a lot of smiles and happy people and all that. So I think everybody's glad just to get out. So that's it.
Thank you, Director Ringen. Who's next? Director Balin?
Yeah, so last week I attended an in-person Mountain Counties meeting up in Placer, and so that's an overnighter, because we have a recruitment kind of area session, and then we have the board meeting. And one of the items that was before the executive board was the strategic priorities for our ledge committee, and Director Ringen is on that, and I think he actually want to commend you for helping galvanize this committee, which is volunteers, consisting of folks in the community plus supervisors and water people, electeds, to prioritizing strategically what's really going to affect us legislatively. either drive up costs or, time or whatever. And so, we went over that, quite a bit and discussed the assembly bills, that would pertain to that. And then that kind of helps our, advocacy to just sort of jettison the stuff that really doesn't, like water or something like that. And so it just is a smart way of looking at all this legislation that's hitting us. So anyway, Director Ringen, thank you for getting that ball rolling and starting to really look at some of these bills really strategically. So, like for, do we engage, do we watch, or do we monitor? And even if Mountain Counties writes a letter in support of one, it doesn't preclude its member agencies to go, well, I don't know, Mountain Counties represents the region, but we can also, it doesn't preclude us from taking a position. So it still works. So then the other thing we're doing is an all county tour, because the education of our state is like Groundhog Day with the legislators, because they're termed out, so that we have a whole new patch of greenhorns. And so it's like, oh, do you know where your water comes from? So we start all over again, our education. It's just ongoing and it's fun. It's a really good thing. So we're doing a tour then coming up in June, Mountain Counties, again, of helping different Aqua and other regions come in and look at how our water gets distributed and what we are doing to conserve water or energy, because they go hand in hand. So one of the things that will be on our field trip this year is to actually go to TID and look at the incredible savings just by lining their canal with solar. So they're basically creating a tunnel, if you will. It's already in a built environment, so that it's not like wind and you're chewing up seagulls and stuff. This is just sorry. Sometimes I don't know what comes out of my mouth. This is a really great example of we're saving millions of gallons of water. Helps theoretically take the stress off of us a little bit, but it shows where they're not waiting around for somebody to see what's going to happen. They're doing it, and the whole state needs to see what we're doing, because that's Southern California water. It's already a commodity. And so anyway, I'm really proud of Mountain Counties for the way we're trying to shine a light on innovative projects that kind of shift our culture of water use in a different direction. So that's what was going on there. And then again, I appreciate Dawn for, if this was these are my board directions, which is to cultivate and honor our tribal trust responsibilities with both tribes, which you're doing, and I really appreciate that. They're incredible contributors and partners. And then the second one is instigate more collaboration with our county counterparts, and I really appreciate that, because our water quality does depend on our watershed. So we need to move in, not wait for somebody. So I really appreciate that one. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, and I'll just say it's my personal value is to be able to help this community bond with their water, where it comes from, and understand their water. So I'm sorry I couldn't participate this year. It was one of the first years I couldn't participate in the home and garden show, but I really appreciate Emily and Abby and all of staff and get out there and help people understand that. So having said that, your crews took the time to demolish the area with our canal system that goes behind whatever that store is, Tractor Supply. Right. And it's where the FOAC people walk their dogs anyway. And so at some point, if we ever have a board goal setting session before a CIP, we could discuss our values that we want to bring in. And for me, what I value is offsets of rate raising with community access to their water. Okay. And I always think that this little place could be something like the Betty White Memorial dog park where we could partner with FOAC and eventually get that partnership going. Because you guys did such a great job remediating that area, and it just seems like it would be a wonderful place to help FOAC. But it would make us visible in a really positive as well, in addition to all the positive things. So there we go, little prelude to if we ever have a goal setting, that's one of my personal goals. So with that, that'll be the end. Sharon.
Thank you. Director Boatright?
No reports at this time.
Okay. I've just got one thing. I want to thank Eric Johnson and yeah, Elizabeth and Jennifer for meeting me out at the Ridgewood Pipeline project on Friday, and so I could understand that better. I really do appreciate it. And Emily, again, I want to apologize for not making the Home and Garden Show. I really do enjoy going to that. Fortunately, I had to leave town, but it's nice to be able to see people you haven't seen in a while, and some people, yeah, you can get a chance to talk to them. Others want to get their hands around your neck a little bit, and that's okay. So I appreciate Ron, you going, and all the other staff members who did. So, all right, if that's it, then we will go. Oh, excuse me, Abby's got one more thing.
I'm so sorry, but Director Balin reminded me of something when you were talking about giving back to the community. 2 weeks ago, I went just down the road off Comage with Doug Everhart, our construction maintenance superintendent. And we did a presentation for the Tuolumne Construction Collaborative Apprenticeship Program. And I just wanted to compliment Doug because he's got 40+ years of construction experience, and he did a fantastic job. He did the majority of the talking, and lots of really great questions for him. People trying to get into not only just the construction industry, but very interested in what opportunities we have here. It was just a way for us to talk with community members that are looking for jobs and wanting to get into the business. And I just wanted to give kudos to Doug Everhart. He did a great job. So
Great. Thank you, Abby. Okay, if that's it, nothing else, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming.